Greeting fellow Rotarians, I am your president, Michael Nisser. Welcome to the Petaluma Rotary Club, 95 years and counting. We're going to have a great session today. Thank you all for coming and welcome to the Petaluma Rotary Club. So last week I inadvertently forgot the Pledge of Allegiance. Shame on me. That was definitely worth the $20 investment. My $100 fine schedule is paid, but I can now start contributing to the Petaluma Foundation. So there we go. So would we please have somebody here to help me, because I need help on these. How about Maggie? Would you help me with the President pledges? Okay. Ready? Proceed. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, good to have that going again. Now, God bless America. How about Wally Bragdon? Would you please lead us in song? Okay. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the light with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Hey! Thought for the day would normally be with Doug Hecker, although he is with his daughter again up in Reno, Nevada for school. So would you please sit down for a moment? I have a thought for the day for my fellow Jippos. How many Jippos do we have out there? How many Jippos do we have out there? No Jippos? Okay, well here we go. We're going to learn about Jippos today. So, I'm going to have somebody run this for me. Let's see. Michael, would you do this? Just kind of tap ahead as I start talking. Just tap the right one. As I get a sentence completed, you just kind of go and they can follow along. Okay, so Jippos. Back in the good old days, the pine timber industry was small in the Pacific Northwest. Most land was on government property and disallowed the use of railways to transport logs. So the only way to log government land was with small land crews and using portable machinery. That brings us up to World War I, where the term Jippo emerged in 1918, based upon the Pacific Northwest strike. You see, salaried employees tried lobbying their bosses for an 8-hour workday. Well, the strike wasn't successful, and what happened is the loggers, they returned to work and they thought, well, we'll do a slowdown. Sounded like a good idea, but what happened was the tactic was so effective that the management said, this having salaried employees is not going to work so well, so they started contracting out piecework where you got paid by the job. And the term Jippo logger emerged based upon the word gypsy. These were the people who were the former company loggers, but now they're independents. So us Jippos, on the other hand, we enjoyed working by ourselves, and despite that there was kind of low margins, it was, an hour's work for an hour's day, and after all, we are all true entrepreneurs, aren't we? So at first, technology was our friend, and when chainsaws and other technology equipment was available, it was good. I mean, it was good to go. If you were a husky man or woman, you had a great job out there enjoying being the entrepreneurial spirit that we were. By the 1950s, though, technology changed, and the over-extraction of timber on this government land became a problem, and it was tough to make a living wage. So by the 1970s, environmental regulations and other changes came along, and the logging industry drove many of us GIPO loggers either out of the business or out of town.
And they became Rotarians.
They did become Rotarians, and we'll get to that in a second. So much for technology improvements. Anyway, now the changes made it hard for us to earn a buck. So sadly, by the 21st century, we GIPO loggers have been described as kind of an endangered species, if you look it up in Wikipedia. Some even say that we are fellows that you will seldom see. Can you imagine that? Well, truth of the matter is, most of us had to leave the beautiful Northwest, the Pelican Bay area, and to come to the Bay Area or elsewhere to get work. So far away from our Northwest homes, from our family, from our friends, from our loved ones. Even today, local people up in the area lament about this, how they missed us, how they missed supporting us, how we supported their local economy. But there is one more thing that no one could ever take away from us, our club song. And so now you know the rest of the story. So if you would please stand and sing along with me, and would you go to the next slide, please? Okay, here we go. Hit it. I'm a rambler, I'm a gambler, I'm a green lumber handler. I'm a chippo from Pelican Bay. So raise up your glasses and have one on me. I'm a fellow you seldom do see. Okay, thank you. All right, and now we have a Rotary moment for fellowship, so please stand, go ahead and say hello, give hugs, or whatever one does to enjoy your neighbors.
President Nestler, fellow Rotarians, please join me in welcoming for the first time my guest, Melinda Durham.
Linda, welcome.
Welcoming. And no longer a guest, Mireille Broussard, who is here joining us.
Well, we sure hope so. We're looking forward to seeing the application. You got the application in? Awesome. Okay, well, thank you for submitting it. We certainly look forward to processing that. Anybody else visiting Rotarians? Going once, twice? Okay, here we go. Next up, August 22nd, that would be like last night, we had a board meeting. I wanted to give you some feedback on what happened. We had a great time, a lot of fun. And first off, you remember that we had in our second meeting where the Sonoma Club spoke to us and talked about membership fatigue they had and not having so many small things, instead having ones that really made it count. And that resonated with our club, as you remember, a couple of weeks ago. So our budget has gone from $88,000. Oh, thank you. It's for John and others, you know, as a new president, you get these initiation rights, and I've been going through it for 7 weeks. And so my bell has gone. Now, when you're without a bell, you know, you can see that's a bad sign. You don't have control, you don't have a bell. But, you know, one of Rotary's international principles is to promote what? Peace. Peace. So I kind of figure if I don't have a bell, this is a good sign. It's kind of like a Nobel Peace Prize for me, right? So I have no idea what this is here, but am I to open this, or? Wow. How does one, oh my gosh. Okay, so.
Well, there's got to be something in there. I'm going deep and get in there. Jump in. Yes, sir.
Better start singing about that.
There's got to be a pony in there somewhere. Oh, indeed. Okay, we're going to wrap up. Thank you so much. That was well worth the journey.
Hey, Michael, send it back. We like the gong better.
There is something to be said for that. Now, for those of you who are visiting us, as I've normally been once for each week in solidarity for my Bell Beach run, it's been, after about 6 or 7 weeks, it gets kind of annoying. So maybe I should do it 7 times a day. But we are on our 7th meeting, so this is awesome. So I think I've lost.
Closure here. So here we go. We were talking about the budget and what we did in terms of our meeting last night. So the Miracle League, we've had the Fork to Field for a couple of years, 10,000 one year, 15,000 the next, again, selling $100 tickets, but we will not be doing that this year. We'll go ahead and have a little bit of austerity on that. By the way, I don't know if you've heard, is that some of the people in the Sunrise Club who are associated with COTS, they said, that worked so good for the Rotarians, we're going to do one of those this year. And so you'll see their signs around town. They're doing a Fork to Field type of thing. And one of our Rotarians, who will remain nameless, but he was next to the immediate past president, has something he would like to do also. Maybe we'll talk about that later. So it's a good idea, and we might do that again next year. Super raffle. Spend $30,000. We're going to see if we can shoot for $25,000. So if you were selling 10 to 12 to 15 tickets, that will be plenty enough. Some of those who we know like to be big fundraisers on that, great, by all means. But we're not going to be pushing too hard on the super raffle. The Serenity Garden, yes, we're going through with that. We've been making good progress, and so we have $4,000 in that project, but we get 50% back from the district, and so that project is off and running. We're ahead of time. Other than that, we have the Salvation Army project, and actually, immediate past president Chris Rainey said he would go ahead and give $2,000 in his year that he had, so it won't be coming out of the budget this year. So that project is well on way. And the STARS mentorship, we're still very much committed to that. We'll do a mid-year review at the end of the year, see how that's going, make sure that's the best place for us to do our investments. But remember, the latter part of that is where we're going to have some scholarships towards the end of the year. The dictionaries and the holidays are each about $6,000. We're still committed to those. So we're looking forward to those. And so the Miracle League is about $80,000 in appropriations. Not my money, it's the club's money. I can say, well, okay, it's all taken care of, but they remind me, no, that work still needs to get to be done. And as you heard last week, is past President Lee had said, yes, we have been making good progress on getting the design phase going. Okay, also, new membership categories. We spoke about having a family membership and a corporate membership. So the committee has been formed, and they're going to start working on that. So if all goes well, it'll be probably about a month or so, and we'll, at one of our club meetings, we'll go ahead and make an amendment to the bylaws with a 2/3 vote. So we'll talk more about that. But some of you might be interested in family memberships, or maybe even somebody who's not in now. Where maybe one spouse spends a lot of time on the road, but their spouse or partner might say, I could make half the meeting. So I'll give you more details. But that's an exciting thing. I think that'll definitely help our membership. Next up, house relocation. As you know, we're looking possibly to, where do we want to go in future years? So we're going to have our house committee talk about, do we want to stay here at the Petaluma Golf and Country Club or some other possibilities in town? So if you have input, please work with our committee on your ideas for that. And then we want to have the 3 F's, fellowship, friendship, and fun. And so in late October, we're going to have a Rotary Days, and this is something our president, international, Barry Rassin, said he liked the idea. So many people don't know that much about Rotary. And so the idea is we're going to have a potluck, but we will invite our family and friends, but also prospects or other people that just might be interested, and have a little bit about what the things are that we do for the community and what Rotary is really all about. We're going to have a barbecue, which will be served by our Rotarians, and Tony, Jay, and even Danny said they like to help with these types of things, so look for more on that. But it'll be a potluck. Okay. Next up on the 3Fs, August 23rd, I think that's today, isn't it? There is going to be a grand opening for a rub kit opening at the Chamber of Commerce. So we're not going to be at the block tonight at 5 o'clock. Here's the new information. Rotarians, by the way, are always invited as chamber members to come to their after-hours social, and this time it's going to be with the Chiramonte Construction and Plumbing Company. They're going to do a ribbon cutting at 6 p.m. I think it opens at 3 p.m. and it's till 7. So if you like through serum, they're going to have libations over there, so that's all free. And I guess they have some nice heavy hors d'oeuvres. So it's on Clegg Street, which is 2 blocks on McDowell, 2 blocks north of Corona, or if you will, it's across from the FedEx building on the other side of the street, or if you just remember Lagunitas, just south of Lagunitas on the other side of the street. So anyway, I hope you can make that. So we're looking forward to that. And then the coming week is our club assembly. And for our club assembly, we're going to have getting to know your board members. So there's going to be about 4 brief talks, and they're going to talk about what is their Rotary story, what Rotary means to them. We'll have a chance to have breakouts where each people at the tables, you can say what Rotary means to you based upon what you heard or what's your story. Then we'll go ahead and have the board members do a panel and get some feedback and a question and answer session. So it's here again, this is kind of to promote fellowship, friendship, and fun in a way that is kind of consistent with Rotary. So it's a little different than a typical craft talk. After that, we have, our county supervisor. Really? David Rabbit? But, he was called to Washington, D.C., don't you know? So I don't know if he's going to give some coaching, mentoring for our chief executive, or why he's been called back, but he will not be there on the 6th. So what are we going to do? Well, do you know this person here? Doug Hecker. Yeah, he couldn't make it this week, but you may remember Project Censored, which he did some years back at the SSU, and they're on their 42nd anniversary, so Mickey Huff, their director, is going to come speak about that. And especially these days where we wonder what's truth in the news, what's gaslighting, all these things, I think it'll be phenomenal. But if you see the picture here, you can see where it's got these black sections, a lot of things being redacted, as they say in the business. So, that's kind of what Project Censored is. What stories have been suppressed by the media, what's really going on, and they each year say what are the things that are most relevant. And then in 2 weeks, we have our golf tournament, so get your foursomes finalized. Remember, we're going to bring some wine the day of the golf tournament, so bring your bottle of wine. We'll have a good time with that. And that brings us to the Rotarian of the month. This is a person, she's in there every month, like so many of you are, and she has done something extraordinary for our Petaluma People Service Center, being a school teacher and wanting to support youth. She's been very instrumental in helping youth. And so, Judy Allowelt, will you please come forward? Congratulations. Well, thank you for the $500 for that contribution. That was very nice of you.
As a peaceful place for children that have special problems in their life, it means a lot to me. So I was very happy to make that donation in Vicky's in memory. So, yeah. Well, thank you very much. That's very nice of you to do that.
Thank you. Congratulations, and thanks again for your generosity. Okay, off and running. So next it comes to, my president's favorite time is stewardship. So we have some people that I haven't seen that much of lately, but I guess first off, Jacerasad, it's so good to have you with us, and could you tell us about what's going on in your school year? I think that would be just lovely to hear. I know you've been very busy with the Montessori. Could you stand up and just give us a little bit about what's going on in your lives? We'd love to hear about that. Maybe I have to switch in the on position.
Is
Not
this
going?
working?
Yeah, there you go.
So, hello. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for personal call. I'm sorry to not be able to come here as often as I like to, but at school life is busy. So we are working on a new campus. We are going up to middle school, and so that's really exciting at the Spring Hill School. We are Petaluma's only independent school, so that's it's wonderful to have that in our community. And I think that's it. We are working really hard. That's it.
You've got a great group, and thank you for doing God's work, for all you do. For education is so important to us all. Would you like to make, towards your fine schedule, would you like to offer anything this week, or you want to just take a pass?
I would.
How about $25 or $50 if you can find that in your heart?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, seriously. You know, it seems so improper that the person who has the fine can to ask them next, but Kip was here last week. But Kip, you've been gone for a couple weeks. Do you want to make any show any demonstration of stewardship? What's your thinking? Is it where you been there, big boy?
I think taking a little trip down the road, so why don't we just wait and do it then?
We'll wait and do it then. So I understand that you're going to be going with Dan.
Give me $25.
Oh, okay, if you want to. Okay, thank you. And how about Dan Labarre? Do you want to? Do you have anything to report on what's going on with Lace House Linen or exciting things in your life?
Not really. Just two kids, two of my grandsons, one left yesterday for Syracuse.
Syracuse.
And the other one's leaving in a month for Stanford. So
Oh, Stanford. Ooh, I don't know if we should tap you up. You're probably already been tapped.
they all take after me.
I'm sure they do.
And I'll pay $50.
$50. Well, thank you, Daddy. Okay, very good. And let's see, anybody else that comes to mind? Oh, geez, there's just, it's so rich out there with people that anybody else want to demonstrate some stewardship? John Dato, you, I think, made a trip to San Diego. Would you care to tell us about your getaway?
Thank you, President Michael. Yes, we had a short vacation to San Diego. And I'd like to inform the membership that your lives are never your own. Because while I was in San Diego, the phone rang, and who's on the phone but the president, informing me about some Rotary business that apparently they wanted to discuss at the board meeting about someone taking a leave of absence. So you want to be careful when you go on vacation. Yes, we had a lot of fun. We attended the horse races. And I'd like to share a little with you, and I'll pay my fine schedule for the year. I'll give you $100.
Well, wow. Thank you very much. Very generous. Okay, well, I think that's pretty good for this week. We're going to go ahead and continue on, and it's time for our raffle. You know, I don't know how you guys are on this stuff. And some people are like, well, $175, why don't I buy a lot of tickets this week? So if it doesn't go this week, we ought to start thinking about maybe put in extra money, because we're getting up to 200, and the last digits are 2757. Once again, 2757. $175 possibility. There's only 5 rocks in there, and one of them is okay, well deserved. So okay. Let's see how many we got here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just counting 5. Okay. 4 blues, 1 brown. Do you feel lucky? Go for the warm one. Always the warm one. And it is a blue. So a lovely bottle of our Pinot for polio. It's scarce, so thank you very much. Okay. Which brings us up to our esteemed colleague. John has had many years of service. I can remember back when I was president of the Petaluma Golf and Country Club, and we had John Sherrar back in those days. And since then, our city has gone a long ways. We've had a lot of opportunities, many challenges, but I think that's really what defines a good city manager, is when we get these tests, what do we do? How do we handle it? There's a lot of different constituencies. There's a lot of different segmentations in our city. And so I just think it's great when you see somebody that commits himself to public service, as John has done. And I just would like to see, I'm sure we have all of our favorite questions, which kind of John is used to those. But also consider it when you hear this as far as what is the call to action for us? What do we as Rotarians, like John F. Kennedy, what can you do for your country? So when you hear that, and I'm hoping that John maybe will have some ideas that us as a service organization might give us some tips on things that we might not know about.
Well, that was a wonderful introduction right there, Michael. Our speaker today is not a stranger to any of us. We've been very lucky having his service as our city manager the past 10 years. But let me talk a little bit about his background leading up to that. John has a Bachelor of Arts degree in political science from UC Santa Barbara. He's got a Master's in Public Administration with distinction from Cal State University Northridge. In his career, he has been with the city of Oxnard, Yuba County, the city of Jackson, Woodburn, Oregon, and then finally our time in Petaluma. He's been involved in a number of organizations relating to his profession, as well as a presenter at a number of public agency events. Personally, though, John says he's going to stay in Petaluma for now, which is going to be wonderful. He and his wife Haiti have been married they've been together for 35 years, and they have 4 children, all adults, 6 grandchildren. John prefers to read nonfiction to fiction, and he's looking forward to continuing and adding to his hiking miles and biking miles upon his retirement in a few months. But in the meantime, he's still very much active in our city, so let's welcome John Brown, our city manager.
So can we turn off the before picture? Because that's just depressing, really. I stand before you today a broken man. I appreciate the opportunity to address this group again today, as I have a few times in the past. Before I get started, though, I wanted to recognize your group for the commitment that you've made and the work that you've done towards the Miracle League project. Thank you for being great partners. It's a wonderful project, and we couldn't do it without the help of a lot of organizations and volunteers such as yourself. So we very much appreciate that. With what amounts to about a 35-year career in local government, I could talk to you about a lot of things, some of which would probably be more interesting than the subject that I've chosen. But what I want to talk to you about again today is the city's finances. And this is the part where if you're digesting, you'll probably want to go to sleep. But for me, it's a kind of a terrifying thing that keeps me awake a lot of nights. Our finances at the city are first and foremost as my concerns as your city manager. It shapes the policy advice that I give the city council. It guides my daily decision making. It impacts how we are serving the community, and it also affects our interactions inside the organization. And as I think about leaving here in a few months, one of my regrets is that Petaluma has not secured new tax funding to address the city's ongoing needs. So many of you will recall in 2014 there was a sales tax measure on the ballot. It was soundly defeated that November. We've surveyed the public twice since that time, and we have found both times that the community still lacks the appetite to help provide the city with a stable base funding source. And I think that's a shame, because I think that Petaluma really should want more for itself than that's going to ultimately give us. We're going to need to be prepared to expect a whole lot less, or we're going to have to accept that anything worth having is worth paying for. The takeaway from our polling is that we need to do a better job of educating the public, and so here I am talking finances again with you today. Our adopted budget this year, which is fiscal 2018-19, is about $171 million. That's $11 million less than last year's budget, and what you see there is the fluctuation that comes from finishing off capital projects. So we had a couple of pretty big projects that we finished in water and wastewater this last year, hence the difference. Everything else is pretty much tracking at about a flat line. Our budget's divided into 7 broad budget categories. 73% of our money is in what's called dedicated or restricted funds, such as our utility operations or our capital projects. These funds are not interchangeable, meaning the city council can't use restricted funds to pay for public safety services, for parks and recreation, or for road repairs. So when someone complains, as they recently did, about the money that's going into a public art project, they can dislike the art all they like, but the money that's collected in that fund can't be used to pay for a police officer or to fix a pothole. Only one fund in the city, the general fund, can be used at the city council's discretion. So talking about that fund for a moment, this year's expenses are budgeted at about $46.7 million. A full 80% of that is spent on employee salaries and benefits. And of that $46.7 million, 70% of that goes to our public safety, police, and fire services. So we're paying for that with revenues of an equal amount, which is the first time in over a decade that our revenues have actually risen to the occasion of meeting our expenditure needs. And every other year since I've been at the city, and I think for a few years before me, we were using any savings we may have had from the prior year to balance the difference out. And when that balance wasn't able to be struck, then we had to cut the budget. Taxes, as this should be no surprise to you, are our main source of support. About 65% of our revenues come from sales and property tax, and also franchise fees and business licenses. That other 35% comes from a number of internal and external sources that are much smaller and less useful to us. So I want to compare that $46.7 million number to 2007-08, which is the year that I arrived here, and it also happened to be the start of the recession. And so the general fund budget that I inherited that year was $48.9 million. Our revenues were $43.5. So the general fund was $5.4 million out of balance, and nearly 2/3 of the city's reserves had been consumed as that fiscal year ended. So 10 years later, we're spending $2 million less than we did a decade ago. And this is a decrease of a little over 4%. Now, in the same period of time, inflation increased 30%. So we've absorbed all of those inflationary increases and still have managed to present a budget that's 4% less than 10 years ago. Now, our revenues, on the other hand, have increased by $3 million, which is about a 7% increase. And so for the many of you who are running a business, my question to you is, are you spending 4% less than you did 10 years ago after having absorbed 30% inflation? And would you be satisfied with an annual growth rate in your revenues of about 0.7%? And I would suggest most of you would have probably quit a business like that. But we don't have the option of quitting that business because we're in the business of serving the public. 10 years ago, we had 350 full-time equivalent employees on the payroll. This year, we are back up to 316. And in that same period of time, we've added another 5,000 residents to the community that need to be served by that many fewer employees. These comparisons really only reflect the net change, though, from pre-recession to post-recovery. And what I'd like to do is talk to you a little bit about what happened during the recession. And our revenues plummeted from that $43.5 million in 07-08 down to $31.5 million. In the same period of time, we were forced to slash expenditures from $48.9 million down to $32.5 million. That was a third. So our expenditures went down by a third. And to do that, we had to eliminate 70 positions. We froze vacancies, we granted early retirements, we laid off about 50 active full-time positions, and we eliminated a whole host of part-time employees as well. And a few of these positions have been restored in the ensuing years. Our hiring since about 2011 has been mainly to support our utility operations, which are not funded with general fund monies, but rather through user charges and utility rates. Now, organizationally, what those reductions represented was privatizing our entire planning function, privatizing our aquatics and recreation programs, privatizing our custodial services, privatizing our animal services function, and short-staffing every other function in the city with the exception of the fire department, which continues to run at a minimum staffing level today. We also instituted an 18-month wage reduction for all city employees. Moreover, no employee salary increases were granted for a period of 7 years. I consolidated a couple of departments. Building projects stopped. Subsidies to the road fund were cut. We deferred maintenance. We did not replace vehicles. We drew down on reserves in some of our other funds that we were able to get into. Our user fees were all increased, and our general fund reserves were exhausted. And I'm sure you've all heard me tell you this story before. Our 2010-11 budget showed a reserve of $5,000 against a $32.5 million budget. To bring that comparison home a little bit, if you had a household income of $100,000, after having met all of your expense obligations, that would leave you $16 in the bank at the end of the year. Who would want to live like that? But that's what we've had to endure. But exhausting the reserves wasn't just an accident or a mistake. That was an informed decision the City Council made because they wanted to keep from making deeper cuts because it was very important to them in order to preserve our core services. So we've come back from some of these cuts, but for the most part we have not. And in the main, we're working from lower baselines that these actions have set. And I'm telling you this so that you can see that when we're faced with another round of deep cuts, our only option is going to be to eliminate services that our residents hold sacred. So I mentioned a couple of surveys, and some survey respondents said they won't vote for a tax increase because they don't trust the city to manage the money. And so it's important to me for you to know that we actively managed our way through this crisis. Because we can be trusted to manage the money entrusted to us. We acted quickly, we acted decisively, we acted effectively, we stayed solvent, and we preserved our core services. So during the recession, our bond rating agencies downgraded our ratings, and they put us on a default watch list, and they were betting against us surviving this. Petaluma, against the odds, kept its head above water, and we continued to provide core services, largely uninterrupted. Now, this effort seems to have gone mostly unnoticed by the community, and that's perhaps because we made it look too easy. But it wasn't easy, and it has impacted what we do, how much we do, and in particular, how quickly we're able to do it. We employ half the staff we had 10 years ago to manage more parks and open space. Our police and fire departments operate at minimum staffing levels. The police department is carrying 17 vacancies, and it struggles to provide round-the-clock coverage anytime an officer leaves or is off the job due to an injury. The fire department increases in calls for service mean there are nights when the ambulance crews get little or no sleep. And they're having to work a lot of overtime in order to keep that going. Now, many of those 50 layoffs I mentioned affected senior, mid-level management, and technical positions. So these were not all the worker bees. It took place at the middle and the top as well. Next to the police, the mid-level management group was the hardest hit. And those reductions have sustained impacts on how we operate. It slows down our work product. It provides less time for long-term planning. It gives us much less time for performance management. It creates labor unrest. We've been engaged in hard, pretty much endless bargaining for a decade. It creates poor morale, and it's increased the number of grievances that we're having to defend ourselves from. So today, 80% of our general fund costs are in personnel. 10 years ago, that number was about 66%, and the difference between where we are today and where we were then was actually made up in capital budgeting. So we put money every year into projects that kept our facilities somewhat up to date. The general fund couldn't support that during the last decade, and so as a consequence, our buildings are outdated, they're undersized, our roofs leak, our HVAC systems are failing on us. Our fleets are old, and in some cases, well beyond their useful lives. And that's important when that's an ambulance coming to visit you. Most people don't see the effect of that either. So from the general fund low of $32 million in 2011, today's 46.7, there's clearly been some growth. And over the same period of time, as I indicated, the revenues have grown by $3 million. So if the economy is recovered, shouldn't we be in better shape than we are? And I would say at the moment we are. I mean, we're not in bad shape. We brought our expenses in line with our revenues. That's a huge improvement. We've rebuilt and actually augmented our reserves. They're at their greatest point, I believe, historically, at least in recent history. We've restored and improved our bond ratings, and we've taken small steps to replace vehicles and start getting our buildings back on a repair schedule. But with 80% of our expenses in personnel, any change in employee compensation really weighs heavily on what's going to happen with the budget. And it's consuming revenues faster than they're growing. Now, we have had to grant salary adjustments since 2015. That has been necessary, although they've been very modest. We've had employee morale and union peace that we've had to consider, as well as just trying to stay competitive in a job market where other agencies don't seem to be struggling quite so much. As well, our health care costs have gone up, and our pension costs are really what's driving our problems at this point, and I will come back to that in a moment. So many of you know we update our 5-year financial forecast twice a year. We do that at budget time, which has just been recently. We do that at mid-year. We use those forecasts to shape the budget every year and to track the course. Our most recent update was completed in 2018. All of our projections have consistently shown some level of red ink in the out years, and that's a 5-year window. This year we're balanced at the end, and we are going to stay balanced through the end of 2021, so a couple of years out. That's because our sales taxes came in stronger this past fiscal year and expected to come in stronger this year. Interestingly, it's a function of the fire. We've seen a lot of increase in construction activity. We've also seen an increase in car sales as a consequence of the destruction that took place. So I'm not going to say there's any silver lining in that, but it actually has shown some improvement in our numbers. But that is not going to be a sustained growth. That's a one-time shot in the arm. We've got a couple of hotels that have come online, and we're now budgeting the revenue from their lodging tax. And we just bought down, using an internal loan, a portion of our PERS liability, and that's created some savings that we've been able to apply to the projections as well. But the bad news is that our revenue growth is not going to keep up with expenses. This gap that we closed this year is going to reopen very widely in a couple of years. And by the end of 21-22, we're projecting a deficit of about $3.3 million. At the end of our 5-year window, 23-24, that grows to $13.5 million. And so what is driving this? In the main, it's employee retirements. These are cost increases that began about 2 years ago due to a number of steps that our PERS has taken that are going to affect our budget really for the next couple of decades. So I want to spend some time talking about PERS because sometimes this is the part of the conversation where things go south on me. I really want people to understand, how PERS works at a high level and what we've been doing to try to address PERS problems at the local level. So that retirement system relies very heavily on investment earnings. It has over $3 billion in its pool. It anticipates getting a rate of return on that money of over 7% on an annual basis. And about 2/3 of what's paid out to retirees is actually coming from investment earnings. During the recession, their investments underperformed, as many of our investments did. So they adjusted their rates not only to correct for that looking back, but they also adjusted their rates to reduce their assumed rate of return to something closer to 7% going forward. And so that creates a rate increase. They also adjusted their rates to address mortality rate changes. And so we're all living longer. People live longer in retirement, so their expectations about what the pool would have to pay out have had to change as the pool continues to pay out another decade longer than it once did. So the average cost of these adjustments to Petaluma is over $1 million a year for the next 10 years. And it'll be 20 years from 2016-17 before the PERS rate returns to the place it was back in 2016-17. So that is the problem that faces the city over that period of time. And so when I speak to groups like yours, somebody usually asks me, why don't you do something about that, or why don't you do more about that? And what I say is, well, we have, but it's generally out of our hands. And so what I want to impress upon you is that PERS costs are long-standing contractual obligations between the city, or a city, and the PERS system, and also between that city and its employees. Those are obligations that must be honored. We cannot back out of those. It's a part of the compensation system. It entices people to come to work for us when they otherwise would not, and not paying it is not an option. Until the courts rule otherwise, public pensions are an unavoidable cost of doing business. So what have we done? These rates of theirs consist of two parts, and one part is the employer's share. That's what the city rates pay for. The employee also has a share. And many cities have paid both sides of that equation for many years, and so you will hear some cities have adjusted their PERS rates to make the employee pay more. Well, our employees have always paid the employee share, 100% of that. So that wasn't an option available to us. We were already doing it, on the relative cheap. But we have negotiated with our employees, many of them, to take on an additional 3% obligation, which has been the city's and now will shift over to the employee. As we've thought about granting pay raises over the last several years, what we've tried to do is give employees bumps that are bonuses as opposed to adding to their base compensation, so that base compensation, the PERSable wage, does not go up. So that keeps the PERS locked in at whatever the wage rate was, and they're getting like a side check. It hasn't made people very happy. This February, we also went into a couple of different scenarios where we went to a second tier, where employees coming in have to work longer for the same benefits as an employee like myself will receive for less work. And now a third tier, courtesy of some assistance from the state, where employees not only have to work longer, they also work longer for a lesser benefit, and all of those things affect our rates positively. And so then this last February, I think the council did the last thing that it could do, which is to try to buy down some of our outstanding PERS liability. And PERS creates a series of different events that all told equal a city's liability. So one of our events would be, for example, when the police and fire went from a 2 at 55 to a 3 at 55 program. It creates like a mortgage. And there's a series of these mortgages that have different amounts owed for different years of time. And in composite, all of Petaluma's mortgages equal what our liability is. We went through, we selected which of those we could buy down in the same way you might pay a mortgage off early to reduce your interest costs over years. We borrowed money internally from ourselves at a rate that's more favorable than we're getting paid in the pooled investment market, and we are buying down those PERS rates using that money. And at the end of all of that exercise, we will net about $250,000 savings after paying debt service on that internal loan. And over the next 10 years, we're going to save about $2.4 million. So right now, there are 3 cases before the state Supreme Court, which will decide very soon, we hope, whether PERS contracts can be interpreted differently than they have been. And if so, that will give the legislature and the government some latitude to implement some system-wide changes, which might provide Petaluma with some additional relief beyond the things that I've talked about. But without wanting to sound too hysterical here, rising PERS costs, if left unchecked, are going to have the same effect on the city that the recession did, but without the hope of a recovery behind it. And as I hope I've impressed upon you today, we lack the capacity to absorb another hit like the one we took in this last decade. So any further reductions are going to seriously impact our ability to provide services, but particularly public safety services, given how much weight they carry in the budget. Our current staffing levels can't be maintained if we have to cut over $1 million a year for the next 10 years. And if that happens, if we do have to do that, we are all going to be the losers here. So where does that leave us then? Well, we need a significant new funding source large enough to support those costs and also to finish digging us out of the recession. Now, in my view, that's a local sales tax. I don't see, after analysis, that any other possible source generates enough, and in fact, no combination of sources together generates enough to provide the relief that the city needs. So if we are going to pursue another sales tax measure, and I believe we must as a city, I believe this time it needs to be a grassroots effort. It's got to come from the bottom up, from the residents to the city council, rather than from the city council down. And then the community discussion at that point will be, what do we need to be successful in winning this campaign, not is this something that we should be doing at all. So I want to conclude, and I hope that my comments today have convinced this group that an action like that's necessary. Your president mentioned earlier, what can we do, to get involved and help the city? And there's a couple of things, and in the way that you're currently helping with a parks project, we could certainly use somebody to adopt one or more of our parks. We're trying to maintain our parks with like 6 guys at this point, so we really need some help from groups to adopt a park, and any help would be helpful. But I think more to the point, what we need are people who are involved in the community to get together to plot a course for a sales tax measure and take that to the city council and demand that the city council put that on a ballot in 2020 and save us from some of what I've been talking about today. So I will stop. I hope, have I left enough time for any questions? So I'm happy to take a few if anybody has any.
John Zimmerman, go ahead, you go first. John, do you want to stand up? You had a question?
Yeah.
How much of the sales tax increase that we're talking about, and how much will it raise?
Our current sales tax is about $13.5 million, so a cent would raise that much, and a half a cent would be around $700,000. I'm sorry, $7.5 million a year. I mean, you can go down to increments of an eighth. So I was in favor of a penny the last time around, and that obviously didn't get the traction it needed. I think anything less than $500,000 just isn't going to be sufficient to fix the problem. I'm sorry, a half a percent. So again, that's around $7.5 million. I'm doing my math wrong. $6.5 million.
How does our current tax percentage at 8.25?
Mm-hmm.
Do we make it compared to our local neighboring cities? They were up saying
Well, actually, we're one of the few cities in the county that hasn't raised their sales tax. If you go to Sebastopol, they're over 9 at this point. I think Cotati is similarly situated somewhere around 9. Santa Rosa has had a tax increase. Nevada below us. I mean, we are one of the last ones that hasn't done anything.
How's our overtime with the police department, fire department?
It's significant.
Yes, that's costing a lot.
Well, interestingly enough, it's actually less expensive to the city to pay the overtime than it is to hire a person on, because when they're on overtime, they're getting paid time and a half on straight salary, but you don't have any additional PERS costs that go along with this. And at that point, we're around 46% of the base salary is what the PERS cost of that is. Your health care costs don't go up anymore. So, those are things that are not salary driven. And so we actually come out ahead by using the overtime. The problem with that is we're burning people out. And, we're actually forcing people to come in and work overtime. And, that's not a sustainable situation. Yes, sir.
What percentage of the base salary is the benefits?
Well, it differs from employee to employee. For an employee like myself, we're called the miscellaneous group. We're somewhere around 30%. If you're looking at a police or a fireman, you're over 50%, between 50 and 60%. And these PERS rates are going to cause those numbers to increase significantly over time. I'll stop there because I don't have the numbers exactly in mind, but you could be looking at something closer to 75 with the police and fire by the time we get to the peak of that mountain we're climbing.
Just to add to that, I would encourage you to do a Google search for City Petaluma salaries, and you'll get to their website, and this is all public information, so you can see where the battalion chiefs that make more than John does, and one of them gets $75,000 a year for overtime, the other $25,000. Their benefits is about $100,000 a year. The salary report is about $150,000 for the $350,000 and $325,000. But if these numbers interest you, you can take a look and see, the top 100 people are around $200,000 including the benefits. It's all there.
Thank you. That's right. Yes. At this point, it's around $93 million with what we just paid down. And about 2/3 of that is actually associated with people that don't even work for the city. They're already have left the city and they're in retirement, or people who have left the city or are working for other cities and intend to retire. So you can see even changing what we do with the existing employees doesn't erase that problem.
So if we were to take over a park, like the Creek Park that goes through Westridge, would we name it after Rotary?
There's a park naming procedure that we can apply to this. Has a ring to it, doesn't it? Well, that could be, well, it probably wouldn't be mowing because we have the equipment to do that, but there's a lot of weeding that has to take place. If there are playground areas, there's, the fill that has to be put back in to create the right amount of padding. That's got to be re-raked. There's going to be some level of, I won't say pesticide or insecticide, but some sort of treatments of that sort that we could use some help with. Pruning, tree cutting, the whole gamut, restroom cleaning. Absolutely. Well, we're down about, I think, 8 in that department right now, and we've added, so that's more than we actually have left on board. Well, we love volunteers, and we have a number, but we're obviously going to need to step up our game on that. And to be able to rely on a group to do that for us so that there isn't that volunteer coordination. Yeah.
John, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I had a question for him. I was wondering if he's going to be doing any bike riding or consulting, or what are your plans for the future?
Well, I intend to work no more than I have to, but I expect I will have to work some. I have put a couple of applications into the United Nations, and I'm interested perhaps in doing some work overseas. I was talking to somebody earlier here, and as much as I enjoy what I do for a living, I would like to trade first world problems for third world problems, and be able to make a lot more impact on people's lives. So I don't know if that'll ever happen, but that's one of the things I'm focused on right now.
Maybe you'll be a Rotarian or some other service.
We'll see.
Thank you, John. Well, thank you all for coming here, and I guess that now I don't know where my gong is. There it is. We have another fun week coming up next week with our assembly. So with this, our new bell is in progress. Meeting will be adjourned. Have a great week.